Hello, Internet. Um, so I watched a movie last night. It was quite nice, actually. I have like a whatchamacallit, like a floor couch kind of thing that I bust out right here, and I watched it in behind. But the movie in question. So I remember seeing this as a kid. Um, Probably 5 or 6. Saw it once, and it's Logan's Run. So I decided to watch it last night. And my God, um, I did not realize one, Basil from Austin Powers is the main character in it. And holy, it was great to see him in that. Two, this is PG. I don't understand how this is PG. Um, there's a lot of nudity, full frontal and below and back, and male and female. Well, no front end male on that part on the lower half, but backside and all that. So it was really. I went into this going, this is probably going to be a nice sci-fi kind of, just chill, not much going on kind of thing. And it is not. Holy, the story's pretty good. Most of the time. The story is basically, since if you have not seen it, I'm going to give you a brief recap. There's a society that lives in a dome, well, multiple domes, like multiple small that make one big dome. And there are like 3 factions, I guess you would call them. Shoot, what do they call it? The black shirts. They are, is which our main character Logan is. Logan 5. That's his name. Betrays Logan 5, a Sandman. And what Sandmans are, they go after runners. And then I'll go into detail about runners. But, you got the green shirts. They're basically, how do I put this? They're prostitutes without being prostitutes. It's green shirts and red shirts. They don't really go into much detail about the factions. Well, even girls are red shirts, but point is, those are like the main things. Then they have a thing called carousel, and that's where everybody goes. And then there's this big circle, and then a bunch of people come out in like white ceremonial outfits, and it spins like a carousel. And then eventually they go flying up to this gym. I don't know if it shows it on here. But basically it's a gym, and then they explode. But they don't call it death. They call it renewal. So they have the chance. So people have a chance to get renewal, so they don't, so they can live, I guess, or get reborn. But so the runners are people who don't want to go to the renewal. So they end up trying to run, which they have the right to run, but they never escape because the Sandmans, they always get them. And so, Logan 5, he's at Carousel having a blast, and he's going, renewal. And then he gets a notification of a runner who wasn't there. And so then he chases after the runner. And then his other buddy, I forget his name. Does it say on here? It does not. forget his name, but he's with him. They catch the runner. Logan misses quite a bit with his gun. Then his buddy gets him. And they don't say kill. He's not dead, but he is dead. They really avoid the word kill. And so he's gone. He's basically dead on the ground. Logan goes, well, this doesn't look like the guy. And then he does this facial recognition, and he's like, no, it's a match. Because you can get your face fixed. And then basically what happens is he finds an ankh and some other stuff of his personal belongings, and then that's it. They go off. Some dudes in a flying like vehicle. The best thing I can think of. Episode 1, the droids that when they're on Naboo, they have that flying vehicle. That's what it was kind of like, but it shoots goo on them, and then they disintegrate into nothing. So after that, it goes to Logan at his house or apartment or whatever, and he's picking his sexual partner. First shows a dude, and he goes nah, and then he picks his woman, and that's this woman on here. Here, I'll show you. So it's the woman on the photo, and that was the first. I was like, holy, this isn't PG, because you could see, because she was just wearing like it was like a dress, but there's no sides, doesn't cover the back, and she wasn't wearing any like underwear or anything, and so it's like, boom, there's just nudity right there, and that's when I was like, wait a minute, what? I didn't think it was gonna be like that, and then I looked, and yeah, it's PG, but so she had questions about the Sandman, about why does he do the things that he does? Because the Sandman, they never run. That's one of the things the movie was trying to say. They embrace the renewal kind of thing. And so, yeah. And then he's like, how old are you? And she's like, I'm 6. And he's like, well, you have a long time to, have many cycles. You're not 30 yet or anything. And then she ends up leaving because his buddy comes with 2 other girls. Then, one of the girls throws a thing up in the air, and which I'm assuming is drugs, because they all just kind of gather around, sit on the couch, and have fun. So, there's that. And then it cuts to the next day. And from what I could tell, they don't really have jobs. Only Sandman technically has a job, but it's not really a job. It's just they get to do whatever, but they also are cops. But the main rule is don't question about the renewal, and then if you're run, then you got to go. You're gonna get chased. But so it goes to the next day, and they're at their office essentially. They're him and his friend, and it shows his friend going into, which I would say, I guess, processing. So once they're dead, once the runners are dead, you take their stuff, and then it like make sure it's theirs, and then it like just destroys it. And so his buddy does it first, and then Logan, our main character, is just chit chatting, small talk. Then he goes and does it, but his buddy's like, hey, meet me at the basically gym, I guess you would call it. And he's like, yeah, I'll be there later. And so he puts the stuff from the runner that he got, and it shows it taking a long time to process, and then it tells him to go sit down, and then he identifies himself, and the whatever's controlling it, which I would assume is just AI at this point, is like, okay, you have a new task. You're going to go to Sanctuary because they have an ankh, and then the ankh, they somehow say it means sanctuary, which sanctuary is like a word that they don't know. And so he's like, how am I gonna do this? How are they gonna believe me? And then they go, oh well, you're a runner now because reasons. So his hand goes red and blinks, and he doesn't run quite yet. He gathers information. He goes talks to his buddy. He talks to the girl, and then pretty much the next half hour is just trying to prove to the people to take him to Sanctuary that he's not a Sandman anymore, that he's a runner. He lets someone go, which Sandman don't, and so then they go, oh, okay. He tries to change his face, and then the doctor gets a call, which I'm assuming is from the people who know about Sanctuary, to kill him, even though he's like, I will only, change his face. So then, lasers are going off, and then he ends up fighting the doctor, because the doctor goes in for some reason, and then the doctor gets cut up. Pretty brutal scene, beams, the lasers are cutting, and there's blood, and just cut open wounds. Like, it was pretty brutal for what it was at the time. And then they run. And I remember when they ran, he was like, where should we go? And then the woman was like, I know a place. And then they ended up going into, the best thing I could say it is, a love den. And that's when I was like, holy, this movie is, PG is different back then. And it was just orgy piles, basically. And they're having a hard time escaping, because I guess there's like drugs in the room, like in the air, and people grabbing and whatnot. But they finally make it out, and then the guy that was chasing him, his friend, gets caught in the pile of people fucking. And yeah, no, so that he's stuck there, and then they find the group, and he convinces them, because there was a lady that was with the doctor, and the lady told what happened, and then said another Sandman was chasing him. So, and then they eventually make it. They believe it, but Logan hits his communicator to call the Sandman, because in his mind he wants to get his time back. So if he finds Sanctuary and came back, he can get his, I guess, remaining 6 years. Because, once you're 30, you're dead. And he finds out that there's 1,000 some odd runners that, that made it. And nobody has made it to the renewal kind of thing. So, then they ran, him and the woman. They eventually find the passage out. And then they go through some water. And then through ice. And then they hit a robot. Which I was like right off the bat going, that robot's going to try to kill him or something. So the robot is talking to them, just basically saying, I freeze the fish because of protein. And then kept like going like, oh, but the fish never came. So then, basically saying all the runners who made it, they get frozen. And they're all frozen in ice. No clothes for some reason. Like, I guess because you go through the water, because the main characters, they went through the water, and then they're like, we got to get all our clothes off, because there's just a pile of animal fur on the ground to warm up with. And so they finally realize that the robot's gonna freeze them and store them for protein for later. And they end up fighting him and beat him. And basically they finally make it outside to the real world, and they, I would say, are in Washington, like Washington D.C., because there was the monument, Washington Monument and whatnot. And so they're going, and she's realizing that, oh, I dropped it. She's realizing that Sanctuary is not a thing. And he reassures her, going, no, it is a thing. And so the movie was pretty good pacing, like all the way up to this point. And I'm like, okay, this is not bad. And then we get to the old man, which he is, in the movie, he is called Old Man. And that is the weirdest part and kind of the boringest part of the movie, is them interacting with the old man, because they realize, what is old? I've never seen old. And then they are like astonished by it. And they don't know what, like, a mother and a father is, and kids, because they're all grown in like, test tubes essentially. So there, I get the way they filmed it. I get it. Like, it's cutting edge. Like, holy, this is like, man, can you imagine a society that doesn't know what this is? And it just came out kind of cheesy and terrible. Because the rest of the movie was fine. But once they got to outside, that's when it started, like, being They finally realized, oh, there's nobody else, really. He's kind of like the last person from the outside. Which they never really tell you what happened with the world. But yeah, so they convince him. Well, first there was a fight with Logan's best friend, and he ends up not making it. He gets whacked with the a flag, the pole and the flag with the flag, and he gets whacked like 3 or 4 times on the back and head, and then dies from getting whacked by basically a stick. And so they buried him, which they're like, this is weird, we never had to bury. And at this point, Logan was like, okay, this is the real world, let's do this. And so they convinced the old man to go back. And then once they go, and he agrees, so they walk back. And they finally get there, but they had to go through a water pipe, a water drain, essentially. And Logan's like, oh man, I used to take this all for granted. This makes sense now. It's water to somehow powers up the whole place. And then they're finally like realizing that there's like a lot of things that they need to be appreciated for. And they basically told the old guy, hey, you got to stay here. We don't think you're going to make it. And then he's just kind of like, okay, cool. And then they go through it, and then they pop out into like a water treatment plant. And then they finally get to the main area, and they're doing another renewal or carousel, and they're yelling, don't go to carousel. And then they all laugh at him, and then he runs she runs up to him and says the same thing, and they still laugh. Then they get caught by Sandman, and then Logan gets interrogated about, did you find him and all that, and he's like, yeah, there's no sanctuary, there's no like resistance and all that. And apparently the AI couldn't take that. And so they're kind of doing like a recap throughout everything that happened. And then the AI just kind of explodes. Like, oh, this doesn't compute, no, and then boom. And then somehow Logan breaks free, beats up the 3 or 4 dudes that hold him down, grabs a gun, then shoots the rest. And then they go and they start to run out because stuff is exploding. And then he shoots basically what I would say the computing power of the whole facility. And then everything explodes. And then they make it outside, and everybody sees the old person, and then they just kind of like touch his face without really asking him, and he's just laughing. And then he sees Logan and the girl, and then they're smiling at each other, and that's the end of the movie. So yeah, it's interesting, and I may sound like I was rushing through the recap, but that's essentially what happened once they made it outside, which is about 50 minutes into the movie. And this is a 2-hour movie. There's no advertisement or anything. It's just a straight movie. And yeah, it was like about 50 minutes to an hour, and then the last hour was just literally them outside walking around and all that. And it was weird. I wouldn't, like, I get why they put it in there, but it's like, why kind of thing. Like, everything I told you is pretty much how it happened. They were just learning like things that they didn't know because yeah, they were in a weird situation kind of thing. So this is rated as the turning point in sci-fi. Like, I guess sci-fi was really cheesy and bad, and I could see it. It still had the cheesiness and the badness in it of some other sci-fi movies, but it was pretty deep. Like, if you think about a society that end up killing themselves after they hit 30, it's an interesting concept. and that they embrace it instead of fearing it. And there's some that do fear it. Like, I get it. The visual effects were pretty good for it. I mean, this was... When was this? This was... I want to say it was 72? 76. So, for its time, I don't think we had what? I think there was Close Encounters, Planet of the Apes, trying to think of any other big ones. Aliens, I think, maybe not. Maybe Alien was 80s. No, I think it was 70s. But there wasn't that many, like, good sci-fis, I guess. But I kind of believe this is where sci-fi kind of went and changed. The funny thing is, they kind of tell you the whole thing on the box, like the whole movie. It's interesting. Yeah, they show pretty much the whole movie on the box. But, yeah, no, that's Logan's Run. I didn't hate it, and I was actually glad I watched it. This was one that I wanted to watch, but I never really had the time, and I had the time yesterday. I was just like, man, there's nothing really to do, so I'll watch Logan's Run. Hopefully you like the whatever this is. I want to say kind of review. I mean, I would recommend watching this. It's not a bad movie. If you're into sci-fis, well, correct. If you're into like early 80s and 70s sci-fis, I'd recommend this. If you're into not that, I probably wouldn't recommend it. It is an interesting timepiece.